It's time now for Countywide, a special presentation of Yavapai Broadcasting News. Join Paul David and Kyle Benedict as they talk with our community's leaders, newsmakers, and people in the know. You'll hear about the hot topics that affect all our lives in Yavapai County. And now here's today's Countywide.
Welcome to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict. Today we are sitting down with the Cottonwood Police Chief, Jody Fanning, who is set to retire later this month, January 22nd. So we're just kind of here to talk about his career with the Cottonwood Police Department and in law enforcement in general. So, Chief, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm sure January 22nd, last day, you're counting down the days here, huh?
Yeah, they're coming fast, and there are only a few days left. So
yeah, and the Cottonwood Police Department has selected a new chief to take over once you leave. And can you kind of tell us who that is?
That's Steve Gazelle.
Okay.
He's a former commander with the Scottsdale Police Department. He retired from Scottsdale and then went to California, where he spent a few years in California, and most recently San Luis Obispo, where he was the chief over there. And now he's going to return back to Arizona and take over for me. Okay, great.
So now, as far as your career in law enforcement, when it's all said and done, how many years are we looking at?
Just short of 30. Be about 4 months short of 30 years when I'm done. So
yeah. Now, how did you get involved in law enforcement? Is this something you've been wanting to do your entire life, or were you that kid who grew up, I want to be a police officer?
Yeah, I grew up watching One Adam 12. And I always wanted to be, I had a best friend when I growing up, and we wanted to be Adam 12, the partners from LAPD. So that was always a goal of mine. However, when I grew up, I lived up in Flagstaff at the time, and Flagstaff had a history of having larger police officers, and I felt I was too short, too little. But Flagstaff had changed their mentality and went to opened it up to where even guys that were 5'9" could be police officers. So myself and another buddy of mine in high school joined Flag PD, and I went to the police academy in Tucson for Flag PD in 1986.
Okay. And how long were you there?
I was there just short of a year.
Okay.
I'm not real fond of working out in the cold. So.
Yeah, especially we're seeing that right now, especially this winter up there.
Yeah.
So you moved here to Cottonwood, and when you became an officer down here in Cottonwood, what was it like? I mean, just being an officer in I'm sure you get that question a lot, comparing then to now, but when you first got on with the Cottonwood Police Department, what was it like?
It was a lot different, a lot different. I came, like I said, from Flag PD, where my shift squad was 8 to 10 officers, and I arrived down here, and my shift is me. It's me, myself, and I, and we're the only ones out on the streets. At that time, there was no Sedona Police Department, no Camp Verde Marshal's office. The Sheriff's office, Sheriff Masher, actually was the patrolman for this area. So he and I, that's where we developed our friendship, was there, backing each other up, because he was the only sheriff's deputy between here and Black Canyon City. So it was crazy. I think there was 11 officers when I first started. We were down in the old building where the finance is at right now. All of us fit in there, including our dispatch center. It was a lot different. We had 3 cars, all different colors. Yeah.
Wow, what a change. And so how did it kind of progress to kind of where we are today?
It progressed slowly for quite a while. There wasn't a lot of things happening and a lot of movement and stuff like that. It wasn't until the latter part of the 90s when we started actually increasing it in our abilities and stuff like that, and our manpower. And we switched over. We were in tan uniforms. We switched over to blue uniforms. Which gave us our own identity, because a lot of people kind of looked at us as the other county sheriff's deputies, because our uniforms looked very similar to the sheriff's office. And we switched to the blue uniforms. That helped us a bunch with our identity, and then we just continued to slowly start to grow. And then things didn't really explode until the early 2000s when Mr. Bartosh showed up and really took us to 21st century with technology and equipment and staffing.
Okay, so now early 2000s when that kind of really, and at that point Cottonwood is growing throughout this time as a community. What do you think is unique about being a police officer in a especially small, tight-knit community like Cottonwood?
The great thing about being a police officer here in Cottonwood, or a small community like this, is that you're still a family. You're a family. The police department's a family because we're 35 officers. There's now 62 total employees at the police department, but it's still a small group. And then the community is a family also. They accept you because they see you at the football games, they see you at dinner, they see you with your wife, your kids at the Little League games and stuff like that. So the interactions that I think are incredibly important with law enforcement is to have those kind of interactions. And I push it really hard with my officers is to coach Little League, coach soccer, coach football, do something and get with the people so that they see not what's portrayed on TV all the time, that we're just like they are. We just have a different job. And I think that's huge, and it's very beneficial because it does help us a lot because our community knows us. We're not just some guy that drives by in a car. Oh, that's Jody, or that's Ryan,
Yeah.
So.
That's great. I mean, it really just seems like that kind of, the fact that they see you at the grocery store or a football game on Friday night or whenever it is, kind of helps bridge that and help that relationship and strengthen that bond between community and, because you're a normal guy. And that's kind of why we have you in here today, is just to kind of get to know Chief Fanning from a personal standpoint and kind of your career throughout law enforcement. So we're going to take our first break right now. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about how Chief Fanning rose up through the ranks and talk about some of that. So that's going to come up here on Countywide. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
So they say it's a man's world? I don't see anybody's name on it.
While they were doing their thing, we slowly changed all that.
Today, women can do anything men can do. And there's one thing we're even better at.
If you don't fix them, sparks from dragging tow chains could cause a wildfire, and that could be scary.
Hi, Smokey.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, did you know 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Let's go to the shelterpetproject.org and meet if you are in a shelter near you. Harlow. Oh, she's one great listener who loves to hear all your stories. My kind of cat. Cerulo is a sweet, goofy boy who's eager to please. Sounds just like another dog I know. So go to the shelterpetproject.org, search your local shelters and rescues, and go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
Welcome back to Countywide. I'm Kyle Benedict, sitting down with Cottonwood Police Chief Jody Fanning, who is set to retire his last day January 22nd. New Chief Steve Gazelle comes in on January 20th. So kind of we're just covering Chief Fanning's career here. We're starting off in Flagstaff for about a year, you said, and then a little less than a year, and then coming here to Cottonwood. So as far as rising through the ranks, just kind of take us through that and how that went.
I started out obviously as a patrol officer. Worked, I believe it was about 4 years as a patrol officer, and then I became what we call a field training officer, where I would train the new officers that were coming in and out. At the time, Cottonwood PD was really was struggling because we were basically the training grounds for everybody else. They'd get hired by us, we'd train them, and then they'd go someplace else to make money because we made next to nothing. When I started here, I think I was making $17,000 a year, actually qualified for food stamps. So they'd come here, they'd get trained by us, get certified, and they'd leave. So I did a lot of training. Then they changed the FTOs to the rank of corporal, and I was one of the first corporals. I stayed a corporal until I believe it was 94. Then I promoted to sergeant. I stayed a sergeant, a patrol sergeant, for until 2006. I was promoted to commander, and then in 2008 I was promoted to chief. There was just, I had to stay a sergeant because there was no place to move. There was no movement up top. When you only have 2 positions available, you got to wait for somebody to leave. So I stayed sergeant for a long time, and I really enjoyed being a sergeant. I believe it was one of my favorite jobs, is because you had the ability to affect things out on the streets, but you weren't just a standard patrol officer. But that was where I would have preferred to stay, but
yeah,
I had to take a chance. I'm glad I did, though.
Yeah, well, in terms of your, I mean, you talked about it before our break, the relationship with the community and everything, and then being promoted to a chief. I mean, that just had to have been, the fact that you had been here in this community for so long must have made that transition as easy as it could have been, I guess.
Yeah, it was good because I did have a lot of working relationships with a lot of people in the community that knew me, and knew how I worked and what I stood for. So it made it really easy, and if we fostered a lot of great working relationships that have continued to benefit the community and stuff like that. I worked a lot with Bill down at Verde Lee. Basically, he helped me a lot on my national night outs because we knew each other, things like that. It was very beneficial, and it's just, worked out a lot better for a lot of people in the community and the police department. Some people were a little bit upset because I would not give them any kind of favoritism, because I believe that you can't do that. But most of them knew that from me before. So it was a good working relationship, and it's worked out really well for the community, I believe, and the police department.
So in terms of the new chief, Steve Gazelle, are you going to be kind of helping him settle in? When's his first
official day will be the 20th. He'll show up at the police department. I'll have my office cleared out, so it'll be his office at the time. And yes, the plan is I'll kind of tour him around a little bit, show him some of the things going on in town, and then just give him an update of what's been happening as far as crimes, drugs, everything that the police department is involved in and working on, the PANT teams and everything else, so that he's up to speed. He's got both commanders, Commander McCooch and Commander Eisinga, will still be there, which they have. I've worked really hard to make sure they have institutional knowledge, pretty much of everything I have, so that they can continue to flow with it. But I'll fill him in as much as I can, and then I'll be on speed dial for him because I'm not going anywhere.
Now, were you part of the interview process for these candidates?
No, I didn't have anything to do with the interviews, simply because 3 of the candidates were internal applicants, and I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to be a part of the process. I preferred to stay neutral on it. So. But I mean, I knew all of them involved. So
now, when you just mentioned you weren't part of the actual interview process, but when you're looking for someone to take over the department, a new chief, in general, are they looking for someone who kind of is similar to yourself, or is it not uncommon for a new person to come in and kind of change something
well,
up?
it kind of is depending. I mean, right now, you have the old adage of the cleanup guys or the head knockers. If you've got a department that's dysfunctional, you bring one of those guys in and they clean it up. I don't believe that the police department has any issues. It's a great bunch of officers that do a lot of really good work. So I'm fairly certain, and just in meeting with Chief Gazelle, that Mr. Bartosh wanted somebody of similar attitude and desire of me, and just to continue to take us down the road and to the next level. And that's pretty much, that's pretty much why I'm leaving. I've been there for 8 years. A standard chief is about 5 years, so I've been to the max at this point. So it's time for somebody with new ideas and a new direction, which reinvigorates the officers, and I think that's what Steve will be, is that person. So, yeah, he's going to be, in a lot of ways, I believe he'll be similar, but yet different.
Okay.
So,
looking back at your just law enforcement career, is there anything that specifically stands out? What's one of the greatest memories you have as being an officer? Greatest memories?
Wow. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of great memories. Being allowed to attend the FBI National Academy was just amazing. Seeing and doing the things back there. As far as being on the streets, there's been several cases that I've done where, I arrested a woman one time for DUI on Christmas Eve, and she lost her kids. We took her kids away, put them in CPS. She was extremely intoxicated. And a year later, I received a cake for Christmas, and it was from her, which of course I wouldn't eat because I wasn't sure what was in that cake. Yeah. Later on, I found out that she had, about a month after Christmas, I found out that she'd went to prison, she'd went through rehab, she'd been sober, she'd got her kids back, and every year for almost 10 years, she'd send me a cake on Christmas Eve, and all it would say on the top was "thank you." Wow! And that was very rewarding, because I found out that she was saying thank you because she knew that had I not arrested her, she would have either been dead or killed one of her kids because of her drinking, and she felt that my arresting her had made her had slammed her in the face hard enough that she took the step to clean herself up. So that was very rewarding for me, and there was other times like that. I had a gentleman one day in court stand up after I arrested him, and he was sentenced to prison. He stood right up in court and told me that the day he got out, he was going to kill me. We don't take those very seriously until about 5 years later. I happened to be walking across the parking lot, and I see him coming at me. I'm like, all right, I have my gun with me. I'm off duty, but I have my gun. And he just walks up to me, and he shakes my hand and hands me a cigar and says, "I'm clean. I just had my first baby, and thank you very much for what you did to me." Wow. And those are the things that make you decide to come to work the next day. So I've been blessed with a lot of those kind of really great events where I actually felt like I impacted and helped somebody. You don't want to send people to prison or jail or anything like that, but sometimes that's the only thing, and they've told me that's the only thing that was going to stop them from their destructive path, was that I finally sent them to prison. Yeah, I mean, nobody wants to go to jail or prison, so, that's almost like a wake-up call. Yeah. In some sense. Wow, well, that's really great. We're going to take our second break. When we come back, we'll see if the chief has any plans here, what he plans to do once he retires again his last day on January 22nd. We're going to take a break. We'll see you in a couple minutes.
Let me ask you a question. When you think of the American Legion, what comes to mind? Is it our volunteer programs that let wounded veterans know they're not forgotten?
I'm here to make sure our heroes know their sacrifice is not forgotten. I am the American Legion.
For nearly 100 years, the American Legion has been our nation's leading advocate for veterans and their families.
I am the American Legion.
This is today's American Legion.
To learn more, visit legion.org.
As an American, it's hard to hear that we have a serious hunger issue in our country. And as a parent, it's even harder to hear that 1 in 5 of our kids struggles with hunger, especially when billions of pounds of good food are wasted every year. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide billions of meals to families in need right in your community. Visit feedingamerica.org to support Feeding America and your local food bank. Together we can solve hunger. Together, we're Feeding America.
How are your girls? Stacy's good. Maggie, she's just gotten so angry. I don't know any of her new friends. And we found out she's gotten into drugs. It's probably just a phase.
Most people don't know what to say about drugs.
Yeah, she'll outgrow it.
But we do. Visit us at drugfree.org.
Welcome back to Countywide. Just a couple minutes left. We're sitting down with Cottonwood Police Chief Jody Fanning, who is set to retire. His last day is January 22nd. Again, got to be counting down the days. New police chief Steve Gazelle comes in. He starts January 20th. So, say the 23rd, January 23rd, your first day of retirement. You're just going to kind of take it easy, I can imagine, just sit back and...
That's pretty much the plan right now. My wife and I have discussed it. I don't have any immediate set in stone plans. I'm starting to look and find something. I'm going to find something to do. My wife is not ready to retire from her job yet, so she'll continue to work. And then I still have my son that's still in high school. My daughter graduates this year, so you know, I'll be sticking around here and I'm going to be finding something to do, but I'm going to take it easy. I'd like to take my dad and do some fishing or something like that for a little bit, but if the right job comes along that I think interests me, then yeah, I'll jump on it, but I'm not going to get in any really big hurry. Just want to relax a little bit and melt back into being a civilian. I mean, I've been a police officer more than half my life, so it's going to be a little bit different January 23rd when I wake up and I no longer am a badge-carrying police officer. It'll be an eye-opening experience, I'm sure, but I'm ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta imagine. I didn't even think about that. You wake up one day and all of a sudden you're not, you know, an officer anymore.
Yeah.
But hey, the time off, the relaxation that's coming your way is well deserved, and so you plan on staying here in Cottonwood for the time being, at least.
Yep,
okay.
Doing what I can to help out around town and stuff like that. Help John Brown with the Mingus softball team a little bit. You know, just things like that.
Yeah, I know one thing, you know, so when I first got here and kind of learning about the different personnel with police and fire departments and the county and whatnot, one thing that a lot of people said about you was your involvement in the community was something that was really just welcomed. And it seemed like how close you were. And you talked about earlier in the show about that relationship with the community. And I think that's something that everyone is really is going to miss, and they cherish that.
Yeah, and I believe Steve will be of the same mindset. From what I've seen of him, I think he'll be of the same mindset. It'll take a while for people to get to know him. Randy Taylor over in Clarkdale, he's really doing the same thing. You know, he coaches at the high school football and stuff like that. So I think it's incredibly important for a police chief to be very involved in the community. The people need to know that they can communicate with him and they can talk to him. And so I think it's really important. So
okay.
I just enjoyed it. So
yeah. Well, I mean, that's always great, enjoying what you love to do. So I really appreciate you coming in and talking about this. And January 22nd, Cottonwood Police Chief Jody Fanning's last day. Yeah, the 23rd, relax, enjoy it, right?
I will.
Okay.
I plan on it. So.
Great. Well, thanks for being in here today. That's going to do it for Countywide today. I'm Kyle Benedict. We'll see you next time.